At that point, he started grooming me to find more friends, to get more involved. And so that's what we did. And next thing I knew, I was bringing in other kids from the neighborhood, and we continued doing what I had been doing before. And we just kind of started to build on that. And this whole time, because my parents were busy with their business, they didn't know what was going on. So I had this whole secret hidden life from them that unfortunately they couldn't have even known about. Most of the time, by the time they were getting home that evening, I was home and they thought everything was fine. Fast forward years later, and my behavior is just continuing. And when I say years later, about the time I was 14,
What's up? Welcome to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. And if this is your first time, and if you're returning, welcome back. Today is March 12th. Happy Easter. By the time you hear this, it'll be the day after Easter. Got a couple of things. If you want to support the show, whatever podcast platform you listen to, rate, review, and tell a friend. If somebody you know could benefit from hearing some of the episodes that you've heard or are currently hearing, tell a friend. Refer somebody. Word of mouth is the best business you can get. Other ways you can support the show, you can go to the Linktree down at the bottom of the show notes and follow that to our merchandise page. We are now selling merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, poster art. It's through a company called TeePublic, and it's a drop ship deal. It's the only thing that I could kind of do right now until figure out a way to get some more fundings coming in through here. We also have a Patreon page that's being constructed right now. Almost done. I still got some things that I got to work out on it as far as perks go, but that's on the way. And that'll be another way you can help support the show. This week's show, it will be I believe it's going to be the number 30. I have another one that's supposed to come out with Eric Maddox from the Latitude Adjustment podcast, but I had to throw this one in front of it because the one that I had edited and ready to go with him, I'm still waiting on the approval for the ad that I got hired to read, the show got hired to read. So I don't know if they'll be back and approved by tomorrow, which is, my release date, or it would have been. But either way, I'm going to release this one. And even if I get the approval tomorrow, I'm going to, I'll release that one as well. So you may be getting 2 episodes, tomorrow or today. This is Sunday that I'm doing it. And I'm talking about tomorrow being Monday when I release those episodes. Kind of starting to confuse myself there for a second. But this episode is very unique. Honestly, I don't know if this has even been done yet, to be 100% honest. I mean, it's got to have been done. I can't see how it could have not been done. But then again, I could also see how it could not have been done. The 3 gentlemen that I'm interviewing or talking with today they're actually incarcerated in a prison facility somewhere. I don't even know where they are. I didn't ask, but they have a cell phone that they have that's a contraband item, and they're able to. Well, one of them, I'm an admin for a podcast group on Facebook. The people that request, usually I'll look and I'll see, if they're podcasters or if they're listeners. I friend request them in trying to, that's my audience, listeners of podcasts and podcasters. And then also it's helping me to grow my following on Facebook. So I friend requested Jimmy, and he got back to me, and I guess he looked at my profile and saw some of the, that I was a podcaster and listened to one of the episodes. And then he reached out to me and kind of told me his situation and where he's at. And, we set up a time to do a Zoom meeting, which I obviously didn't record the video portion of it for the obvious reasons, but nonetheless, it was a pretty good talk with three guys. Two of them are doing 20 plus each, and the other one is doing a life sentence term. We talk about redemption. We talk about their charges, because two of them are kind of unique circumstance charges, and I'll let you decide for yourself. I had some questions, but I mean, the subject is difficult because it's such a gray area. And I believe the two charges were statutory rape. They were dating minors while they were, older. And I mean, back, I think in our parents' days, that was it wasn't as big of a deal as it kind of is now. I mean, as a father myself of a daughter, I mean, I get it, but I mean, I don't know what I would do until I was put in that situation. I don't know if I would freak out and call the cops, or, you know what I mean? I'd like to think that I wouldn't, but who knows? So, I mean, it's a thought provoking conversation for sure, to say the least. It's a little lengthy, about almost 2 hours. Audio, I tried to clean it up as much as I could, but the audio in some areas, because they're in a prison, so it kind of crackles a little bit. I tried to remove it, but I mean, I got it as good as I can. I just figured the uniqueness of the interview itself will override the minor audio difficulties. So anyways, let's get to the show. Hey, this is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today's kind of a unique situation, and I'm not going to explain it. It'll explain itself as I let my guest introduce himself. So, hey, Sal, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, considering. I mean, everybody's kind of in your situation now by force. No, I mean, aside that we can leave, but I mean, you know what I mean? It's, the whole world damn near is locked down in their homes.
Yes, definitely. Because you guys are in what they call it, self-quarantine, self-isolation.
Yeah.
We've been, me and my buddies here, Noodles and Jimmy, we've been in judicial isolation for a while.
Yeah, that's the interesting part of this interview. I've been in that situation myself. Definitely not as much time, but just being introduced into that environment in itself is a traumatic experience, and especially for 3 years, because you kind of don't. It's like you're getting introduced to it and you're just getting used to it, and then you're getting out. So there's no, you know what I mean? There's no getting, for me, it was no getting used to it. It was, I hadn't got to that point yet.
Right. Good. Understood.
So, I mean, for most people that are incarcerated and are spending time in prison, there's a lot of things that lead up to that point, right? You don't just, leave the house, or, well, sometimes you do, and that happens. But I mean, a lot of times there's, things that happen in your childhood and your upbringing, missteps that have happened, in the parenting of kids. So, I mean, explain a little bit about your situation, without giving too many details, because we don't want to compromise your situation. You're taking a risk by even doing this. So,
right. I'd say, let's see, it started the kid portion of it, you said?
Yeah, you don't have to, I mean, just brief overview. You know what I mean? Was there addiction? Was there drugs? Was there, you know what I mean? What was the thing that took you down?
With sexual in nature, but in terms of the upbringing, it felt pretty normal.
You want me to jump in since mine started with the upbringing? Yeah. Okay. Hey, Sean, this is Jimmy. So I think that mine, I can definitely point to my childhood and start there. So I'm actually going to jump in and take the lead on that.
And so we're talking to Jimmy right now. So go ahead.
All right. So for me growing up, I was moved around a lot. We bounced from place to place in my first probably 14 years of my life. So I was never in one place too long. Are you getting me good on audio?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay. So in one of the places that we lived, I made some friends. I made a friend with a guy. Sorry, I'm stuttering here. I made a friend with a brother and sister. They were my age. And I would spend all my time with them. And I kind of latched onto these two because I was going to school in a different school district. I didn't know any of the kids in my area. So for me to have a friend at that point, we latched on and we grew really close really quick. Both of my parents were very new into their businesses and they were never home up until 7 or 8 o'clock every night. So I pretty much was there to take care of myself. And that turned into me spending all my time at my friend's house. So their parents were going through the same kind of thing. Their mother was a car dealer, or car salesperson, and their dad was a painter. And so they were gone at the same amount of time. But it worked out because they had a babysitter, who was a family friend. This guy was trusted among the neighborhood. Everybody knew him. But what was going on behind closed doors was not what everybody thought. And so you can imagine, without getting into details, where that's going. So essentially, from 6 to 10, we basically were thrown into the world of sex really early. And, when you hear this stigma of sexual abuse as a child, most people think that, oh man, it must have been horrible. But for us, it wasn't. We enjoyed it. We had fun, and it was a game for us. So it was something that sex was ingrained very early. When we were about 10, this is kind of where I'm not sure what was going on their end. But essentially in the middle of the night, they packed up and moved, and I haven't heard from them since. But Steve was still there. He was still there, and I was still very active with him. And at that point, he started grooming me to find more friends, to get more involved. And so that's what we did. And next thing I knew, I was bringing in other kids from the neighborhood, and we continued doing what I had been doing before. And we just kind of started to build on that. And this whole time, because my parents were busy with their business, they didn't know what was going on. So I had this whole secret hidden life from them that unfortunately they couldn't have even known about. Most of the time, by the time they were getting home that evening, I was home and they thought everything was fine. So fast forward years later, and my behavior is just continuing. And when I say years later, about the time I was 14, the girl next door moved in. We started a relationship. We considered ourselves boyfriend and girlfriend, and basically started down that road. And that road is what led me here today. My indictment goes back that far, believe it or not. And so that sexual addiction that started so early not only didn't end there, but continued on for years. And I think I talked to you about this a little bit before, but it moved into my marriage. It destroyed my marriage. It broke my family apart, and eventually led to me being here where I'm at today.
So, do you think, like, because I mean, every kid, I'm not going to say that every child, but I know for myself personally that when I was younger, I mean, I got involved in the same kind of things. And it was a lot of it was like, cause I wasn't taught about sex, by my mom or my dad, or, I never got that talk, the bird and bees thing. But what we did have was, there was a across the street neighbor, they had a fort, and in that fort, they would let us go back and forth, through their yard and go and hang out in there. And there was, what was it? There was porno picture, like pages from, porn, you know what I mean? Like, magazines. And that was what I first, my first, what would you say? Experience, you know what I mean? Seeing something like that, like, and as children, what do kids do, man? They copy what they see. You know what I mean? If they see something. And so when I would get in a situation at the daycare center or whatever, we play house or play doctor, or, you know what I mean? And it's like, I would do what I would see in those pictures, you know what I mean? Or at least attempt to try to what I saw. And so, I mean, I never really thought of my, when I would think about it later on in life, it was, it was embarrassing because I think, that you really weren't supposed to be doing something like that. And, but I think kids just, that's, you explore. That's kind of how you figure things out. And, sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. But when you're, like it wasn't anything that was forced on me. So that's why I don't think it stuck, you know what I mean? Into adulthood. But it sounds like you were groomed into this from somebody that was a little bit older and then used the situation to benefit themselves, sexually, and that's a little bit different,
Right. And I think that that's the biggest difference there. And, we talk about the whole addiction thing. Mine became addiction because it was so fun. And because I never got that talk from, like you, I never got that talk from my parents that this is wrong, this is not okay. And then when that talk did come around, it was too late.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's tough, man. And what ends up happening, when people are exposed to something like that in a forced way, you end up acting that out as an adult, and the cycle continues, just like physical abuse or mental abuse, or, whatever it is that somebody was put through. 9 times out of 10, maybe it might be a little bit less, but I'm just going to say 9 times out of 10 that behavior, continues into adulthood, and then they do the same thing to other people.
Right.
That's my experience with it. Or from what I've heard, you know what I mean? And all the situations that I know about. So yeah, it's nothing. I think I'm not ashamed of my past when it comes to something like that. And it's like, cause I know I'm not a homosexual. All right. I know what I prefer. And,
right.
When I was out there using, a lot of the things that I did, especially with methamphetamine, a lot of the things that you end up doing that you never would have done, you know what I mean, had you not been under the influence of a substance like that.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah, that's tough, man. Anything that's sexual in nature and has to do with kids, man, that's a tough one.
Oh, it is, and it doesn't take away from what I'm here for now. And I think that that's the important part for me is I understand how I got here, but that's what I needed to understand of how I got to this situation, how I even got to that, because it's such a small portion of your life. I was active in the community. I was active in the church. I was active in all these things, but I had this whole hidden life going on. My wife didn't know I was having an affair. My parents didn't know I was having an affair. And, things just, but like I said, it's just hard to reach that point where you realize that, if this had never happened to you, you would never be where you are today. Yeah. And it's hard to get past that. And I think that, one of the things that you talk about is that lowest point in your life. That is where my lowest point in my life was realizing where I'm at and how I got here and how I felt like I was not in control of my own destiny.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a tough part, but I mean, there's an even tougher part of that situation. When you got incarcerated and just, I mean, I'm not sure what your charges are. I don't want you to tell me what your charges are, but I mean, if it's in the nature that I'm thinking, that creates a whole new set of problems for you.
Correct.
And I know personally, how that goes, because when I was where I was, they would literally tell you that they're touching down. And right. if they don't PC up as soon as they hit, intake and they decide that they want to try to come to general population, it's not allowed. not even by the guards.
Right.
So it's, and there's no, and you don't get to explain yourself. You know what I mean? I mean, even, and that's kind of unfair in itself, because I mean, there's always two sides to a story. I mean, you know what I mean? Unless, there's brutality involved. I mean, you can go urinate in public and catch a charge like that will label you.
Right. And, go ahead. Oh, yeah, and that's one of the things that, I was very lucky is I was able to come in because of my age coming in. I was able to come in and people pretty much nowadays know if somebody that's young comes in with a charge like that, they know that typically it's along the lines of what mine was, of just having a girlfriend that was too young.
Yeah. Did you did you experience anything at all? You know what I mean, as far as pushback from the population in there?
Oh yeah, definitely. So there's two instances that come to mind. There was one, both of them centered around roommates, where when they find out, and because you don't come in and advertise like, hey, this is what I'm here for. But when they find out, they feel like you've been hiding that from them. And so both of them kind of got escalated real quick. But then because we had developed a friendship before that, both of them heard me out and both of them listened, and we sat down and went over the paperwork so I could show them, this is why I'm here. And everybody's like, oh my God, I did that too. I just didn't get caught. And
yeah, for sure.
That was one of the things that it took me years to realize I'm not unique and my situation's not unique. And it allowed me to create a voice for myself and to speak about what I'm here for and to be comfortable with discussing my situation, because so many people are hiding that. And when they hear you to talk about it, they talk about it and find that relief that they haven't found in their years of lockup.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to thank you for being honest, for your honesty and, being transparent. I always thought about that. I mean, when, cause when you're on the other side of it and you don't have those charges and, you've got the shot caller, whoever your unit is, telling you that, what you need to go do or what needs to happen, cause you know how that goes, and so, you don't know how, what's the word I'm looking for, man? How many other people are in your same situation? You know what I mean? Where it wasn't something like a brutal attack in a park or, whatever you hear in the news, which, makes you think of what a rapist is. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah. So what are you going to, is there a light at the end of the tunnel for you?
There is. We have a couple people working on getting my sentence down to what it should be. One of the problems with our justice system is the fact that if you take something to trial, you get the maximum sentence.
Oh, yeah.
And, I have some people behind me right now that are saying this is wrong. This is wrong, and he should never get more than 20 years for what happened. And so I do have light at the end of my tunnel.
Okay. And then when that does happen, do you have, and I'm going to get to your other guys, but I think what I'm doing is I'm going to do a short interview of each of you individually. So the other guys can follow this same, if you're thinking about what you want to talk about, you're going to follow this same, form or, whatever you want to call it, that
right.
me and Jimmy are doing. So when the toughest thing that I found when I got out was, if you don't have a support system, some family who are going to make sure that, you know what I mean? Cause they put a lot of expectations on you when you get out. You know what I mean? From having to show up for a parole job, this, that, you know what I mean? PO. It's almost designed to set you up to fail. All right. And this was in 2006. So I don't know if it's changed at all. But I doubt it. You know what I mean? Everything's kind of put in place for a reason in our society, and it's usually to benefit, not us. So yeah, it's going to be tough, but I mean, it might be a little bit easier now since technology kind of makes things, simpler. It might not be that difficult, and, I don't know. What are your goals for yourself as far as like, when that day does come?
Honestly, it's scary to think about because you're right that these things haven't changed that much. And we see people coming in all the time on probation violations and parole violations for something that they should never be here for. And that part scares me. I worry constantly about how I'm going to find a job, how I'm going to support my family. Like you, I have children that I want to pay for, I want to be there for. And how do you do that when people are not going to want to give you a job because either A, you're an incarcerated felon, or you're a returning citizen, or whatever it is that they call you, or B, you're a sex offender. So there's definitely that worry there. I don't know about schools, if you can even go back to college to pick up a trade. There's things there's a million questions that unfortunately I don't have the answers to.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone because there's a lot of people right now, almost everybody in the United States that doesn't know what's going on. You know what I mean? So you're probably in a better situation right now than everybody else. Cause I'm not working. I'm in a trade, I'm in a union, but I mean, what are we going to go back to? Who knows right now? I mean, and who knows if there's going to be even, if you've been listening to any of my episodes, I mean, you know where my thoughts are, I'm,
right.
And especially if you've been locked up, I think that's one of the main reasons why they take your gun rights away is because you see, because you hear other people and you talk to other people that have been there, and it's a crooked system. You know, for how they get you in there, you know, the coercion that happens, that, you know, from the time you get locked up. And this isn't, I mean, this is for, I'm just talking in general for, you know, once you get into, you know, they stack the charges on you so you can't get out, and then they starve you once you get in there. So and it's so uncomfortable that, you know, when they throw a deal at you, you're like, please give it to me. And then that keeps their conviction rates up, which keeps the federal money flowing, you know, which keeps the prisons filled. It's an industry, you know, private prisons. That's a horrible thing. I went through, Florence, Arizona when I was, going from state prison to federal prison, and, 9 prisons are in this town, and they're all private. So, I mean, you know, and don't get me started. You know, we're here to talk about you, but I mean, it's just, it's a horrible situation because the whole thing is designed to set you up to fail.
Right. And then the plea deal system needs to go out the window. I remember the day of my trial, my DA went to my mother and threatened her that she was going to send me away for the rest of my life if I didn't take a plea deal.
Huh.
And DAs shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah, no, mine was in coercion with the district attorney. So, I mean, it's like I caught him in a lie. He told me that because I knew my rights, you know what I mean? I was like, no, I'm not going to waive my right to a speedy trial. You have to go and test the drugs. And I knew it wasn't going to happen in the 60 days because of the backlog.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, no, I'm not going to waive my right to a speedy trial, because if they don't have the drugs and they're not tested by trial date, they have to throw the case out. And so they kept pushing it back. And I'm like, and my public defender was working with the DA to try to keep pushing it out so we can get the drugs tested and they can get them in there. And, I caught him in a lie. And so I was like, damn. And so at that point, I'm like, nope, I'm going to go get a private attorney, because you guys are trying to hang me out to dry for a first offense.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's crazy, but the people don't know the public defenders are paid by the same people that pay the DAs. They're working together. They work together every day, and it's not right.
They're in the same office.
Right.
Damn near. No. They just have to, hey, you know what I mean? I'll trade you this plea deal for this one here.
Right. I was told coming into my county jail that if I did not have $100,000 to defend myself with, that I was going to prison. And it was true.
Yeah, I know. It's a horrible system. It needs to be reformed. The whole, everything that we do needs to be updated. You know what I mean? Across the board, from government to prisons to, just everything that we do is just outdated, and that's part of the problem that we're at right now. You know what I mean? Technology has moved way further, than the ability to govern it, you know? So, right. All right. Sal, you're up. Thanks, Jimmy.
Hey, you bud. Hey, yeah, my situation is a little bit of pretty much in terms of the childhood aspect of it, it's pretty close to Jimmy's, but not, I guess, not as severe. Yeah, but
so what you have, you're obviously in there for a sex offense as well. Am I right in assuming that?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And so you've had some of those experiences in childhood that we all do. Everybody plays house and doctor.
Yeah, play house and doctor, and the thing is that I guess now, being older, you kind of realize that the brain is pretty good at forming habits and sticking to them.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is just, things get imprinted on us at certain points in our life. And, especially, when it comes to that. So, I mean, it's everybody's situation's a little bit different, and I mean, there's no one size fits all to anything. You can look at that with diet. You can look at that with, health. We'll just say diet, for instance. What may work for me won't work for you. I may be successful at doing this diet and, cause my body is okay for it. And I try to go to another one and that one just doesn't work at all. We're all different. We all make mistakes. Even the, when you say sex offender, all right, everybody just puts a one size fits all into that category. And our minds immediately go to the worst possible case scenario. You know what I mean? Because that's what we know. I mean, that's what the media talks about. I mean, you don't hear about a sex offense in the media unless it's a rape. And so that's what you associate sex offender with. And so like I said, nobody really knows the stories. So, I mean, and there's two sides to all of them.
Yeah, definitely. And, I guess the perception of it all really drives, I guess, a lot of the sentencing and the cries for justice, etc. And it's a hard battle on both sides. I'll be honest with you, because obviously let's keep it real, and there's a victim on one side of the fence,
Yeah.
And then there is somebody who committed an act on the other side of the fence. But then the strange thing is that, or strange to a lot of people, is that 9 times out of 10, the person who committed the act started out as a victim as well. So it's just like this rolling cycle. And, the thing is, like, ending that cycle, you can't incarcerate your way out of that cycle, because there's somebody out there,
So your situation is a little bit, it sounds like it's a little bit different than Jimmy's, in the sense that, was your situation a non-consensual situation?
No, it's not. It's not. So it's just pretty much the same exact thing, just this gap, of age difference, that still gets all bundled together with every other offense there is in terms of the way how the statutes are written.
Yeah, and like how many years ago what was that?
This was like almost like 10 years ago.
That's so crazy. I mean, I don't know, man. I'm a parent now and I have a daughter. I don't know what I would do. I mean, if I'm thinking about it right now, like, I mean, what was the age difference?
Oh, it was 10 years.
And what was, okay, so there's a minor, like 17.
Oh yeah, like about 17, 16. So you give a person 20s,
Yeah, I don't know what I would do in that situation. That's a tough one, man. I mean, because, I mean, do you feel like looking back on it, that there was something wrong with it? Like if you telescope out and kind of look at it, like try to remove yourself from being in the situation, and like if you had a 16-year-old daughter, and somebody 10 years older than her was sleeping with her and was into, I mean, it was a consensual situation, but I mean, would you be okay with that?
Probably not, and that's the thing. When you zoom out, you telescope out, to be honest with you. If you telescope out and you remove yourself from the situation, you can see why the reaction would be how the reaction is um, in society, and I know for you're saying, you can't imagine how you feel about it. But I think you'd be probably pretty upset with it all, but the difference is with you, and it's just me, thinking here that because you've been behind the wall, and I think you probe first rather than react. You react initially a little bit, but I think you actually probe and ask questions. The why, rather than just go fly off the handle. Most people, they fly off the handle,
Yeah. I mean, it woo, that is a tough one, man. Because I wouldn't. You're right. I probably wouldn't jump to conclusions because I mean, at 16, yeah, you're still old enough to kind of know what you're doing. So I would probably the first question, like, how did this even happen? You know what I mean? Like, where did you meet? Like, you should be at band practice. Yeah. How did this, how did this even transpire? But then it would just, it would be, I wouldn't want to put anybody in prison unless they like actually were, doing something physically harmful to my kid. And then it would turn into something else. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so different than the typical, you know what I mean? What you would consider a sex offense. I mean, it's like in a gray area and you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a big gray area. So, the thing is, okay, so let me ask you a question. I guess it'll kind of help to push the conversation along. So let's say, your daughter's, let's say she's 16, 17, and the guy's 21. How do you react to that?
It's good one. It doesn't seem as bad. I mean, I gotta be honest. It doesn't seem like it would be that bad. It would still be concerning. I think, honestly, the concerning part about it is like, as an adult that love and all that stuff. I mean, it's like, dude, this isn't going to be, if this is your first and only love, then great, even better. Okay. But your own life tells you that that's not really how it's going to be. Love is temporary. You know what I mean? Especially your first. So I would my thing would probably be that, dude, you wait until you're older, man. Stay a kid as long as you can, because when you have to become an adult, it's all bad. Your kids are in such a hurry to grow up that they don't realize how good they have it and to enjoy every part of it, because it doesn't last forever. And as soon as you're an adult, everything changes. And so that would be my only concern for it. You know what I mean? All that I would, you know what I mean? The other thing doesn't even really play a part in my head. I mean, at some point they're going to have sex. I mean, hopefully they don't get knocked up and pregnant, and or I would have raised a child that would be smart enough to not put themselves in a situation where, they're going to trap themselves in their life. But, at the end of the day, I mean, they're your kids and you have no choice but to support them.
Right. Yeah, definitely understand. It's crazy that you spoke about getting knocked up, but I'll give you a kind of funny scenario here to kind of obviously as Americans, we change our views on things. So let's say you go to your grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary, all right? And they're married for 50 years, and your grandmother is 66, and your grandfather is 72. I mean, just stretch it a little bit more. Your grandpa is 70, let's say 75. So that's what, a 9-year age difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's your grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. She's 66. And this happens in America. And it's only, I think, when you get older and you say, hey, wait a minute, grandma's 60. You've been married since she was 16 because she got knocked up by grandpa who was 25 at the time.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Yeah, and the approach back then wasn't necessarily to go to the authorities with it. The approach was to, hey, go to the church and go to the priest or whatever and get married so that you don't bring shame upon our family.
Yeah, you have a point. You have a good point. I mean, things were a lot different back then. I mean, the attitudes. I mean, what, Jerry Lee Lewis, didn't he marry his niece or something like that? Something in at 16. Elvis Presley, Priscilla was really young, wasn't she?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is justify anything that I've done, just kind of showing that, when we get angry at a lot of things, we don't consider that this same thing may have happened within our own family unit.
And I want to jump in here. This is Jimmy again. In my situation, the father reacted angrily, and that's how the authorities got involved. But within a month, the father had calmed down. It was like, wait, this is going too far. Tried to go in and get the authorities to stop. And the authorities continued to push it, even though they did not want to help the prosecution at that point. So I think that we find that, initially families react angrily, but when they sit there and they think about it over time, they realize that this is not the best outcome for not only the victim, but the person that not persecuted, but basically committed the crime.
Yeah, this is such a gray area. And I mean, if we were talking about a violent sex offense, this would be a completely different conversation, but they're just, I don't know, man. That's crazy.
I would be willing to place money that 90% of these offenses are not non-consensual. Or basically 90% are consensual, 90% are non-violent. But because of the other 10%, you prosecute the 90 at the same level.
Yeah, well, and then they're also, I mean, they're just, when, they only see things, they're like robots, you know what I mean? It's, they have a function. The police have a function. If we get called out, somebody's going, and that's their whole mentality. You have some cops out there that are human, you know what I mean? But for the most part, I mean, and then you got to think of the reasons why they get involved in doing that job in the first place. A lot of the times it's because they were in situations where they felt like they had no control, and they put themselves into a job where they have total control.
Yeah. I can see that.
And so after I went to prison, because my dad used to always want to get me to be, he would say, hey, the prisons are hiring, go get a job there, or, you know what I mean? And I come from a family of law enforcement. All of them were. Even my grandmother, she was the first female police officer in Berkeley Police Department. So from my grandmother to my dad to my uncle, even my other uncle worked at San Quentin. He would say, "Hey, try to get a job at the prisons." But after I was in prison, I was like, "There's no way in hell I would want to come here." Like, dude, you're doing time too. You know, but you're voluntarily coming here to put yourself amongst people who are miserable. You know what I mean? For them, I mean, not you do what you got to do to get there, but I mean, dude, you're warehousing misery, and you have to come here. You get to leave, but I mean, it affects them too.
Yeah, it does. I think for yourself and for us in here, captivity is forced upon us by the system. I guess you can say it's forced upon them by the same system because, it's about money for them. And, obviously for your dad and your grandma, it's about taking care of family. So I think that money will attract you in any situation. And I've heard earlier, a bit of your story in terms of the addiction and stuff. And the money trapped you to the point that, you did whatever you had to do to have money to support your habit. So,
yeah. So, is there light at the end of the tunnel for you?
Oh yeah. There's light at the end of the tunnel, thankfully, so it's a level of acceptance that you have to reach, to not be miserable, to not go crazy, because that can happen quite easily. And, like Jimmy said, or I think you asked him about, and you gave him examples about, guys going to a PC, and stuff like that. But I think what I've learned is that the reason why, any other inmates may use the situation or the charges to get the upper hand is because of your personal fear, and I don't know if this is like this podcast PG or
you can cuss. You can cuss.
Yeah, but basically, and I don't know who end up listening to it, and some of the people listening to it, hey, unfortunately, one of your family members, could end up behind the wall for whatever offense. I'd say if they end up for some kind of sexually based offense, hopefully not. You've got to learn early on to give a big fuck you to everybody. And if you maintain that kind of demeanor, like, okay, I'm here and this is what I'm here for, but hey, wait a minute, the fact that we're having this conversation outside my cell door means that you're in here with me too. So, and once you kind of maintain that persona, like nobody cares.
Yeah, I found I mean, I wasn't in a maximum. I mean, I started out in state prison, I think, in like a higher level, and then I went into a lower level, and then when I went to federal prison, I was in a medium, which I should have been in a camp, but since I got arrested when I was 18. Didn't get charged with that, but I got arrested for attempted, I don't know if it was attempted murder or something, but anyways, somebody got beat up with some steel toe boots, and that charge was, I didn't do it, but I was a part of it. And so that was there. And so that was in the federal system, they go back and they look at all of your stuff before they, place you, wherever. They try to make a determination of, as if you're the same person you were when you were 18. So that kept me from going to a camp. But I mean, the medium wasn't that bad. But I mean, there were still, it could still be dangerous, but there, I think what I did that kept me out of trouble in that sense is that, you don't get in debt, you don't do drugs, and you don't gamble. And if you can manage to stay away from those three while you're in prison and just kind of keep out of the, you find yourself, one or two dudes that you can, kick it with. And, like it seems like you guys are three, and that kind of keeps you safe.
Yeah, it has not. Yeah, it hasn't changed a bit. I've been around a couple places, and part of my strategy is that learn the personality types, because you will run into the same people at every prison you go to, just in a different vibe, in a different face, but the personalities are pretty much all the same. Like there's always going to be the young kid who thinks he's invincible. There's always going to be the old guy who complains about everything, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always going to be the guy who tells stories about how tough he was on the street. He repeats his stories and these stories literally every week, and I guess it makes him feel better about himself or whatever. But so you learn the personality types, and you learn how to deal with them, and you pretty much can apply it to, pretty much most of the situations.
Yeah. What I saw too, or not so much saw, but just heard, from guys that, cause in the federal system, it's like, let's say if you robbed a bank, you go straight to a max or a high, and then you got to work your way down. And the only really criteria for that is time not having gotten trouble inside. And so like I would, the lower, the more time you do, the lower the security level they place you in, or you can, request to be, hey, can I go down to a medium now, or to a camp? Because that's even possible too, depending on your charges. And I forget where I was even going with that. So, you'll find out as you guys are podcasting a little bit more that, or if you ever do, guest interviews, that sometimes you like, you're going over here and you'll just go off to the left a little bit. And so you guys got one more, right?
Yeah. We got Noodles right here.
Noodles.
Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Good,
hey,
man.
How you doing?
Good. I hope I didn't use up too much time, man. I'm pretty chatty.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, man. That's just the time. It's great. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem. So, are you same situation?
No, I'm in here for, I'm not ashamed of it. I mean, I'm not happy with my actions in the past, but I'm in here for murder. So, I have a completely different situation from these guys. I have life without, so there's no light at the end of the tunnel for me. So, it's day by day kind of situation.
Was it a self-defense type of thing, or was it a, cause all of the,
in total honesty, no, it wasn't. I had a situation going on, and there was, I guess you could say, mediating circumstance. I wasn't, I'm not trying to make excuses for my behavior. It was really bad, but, I was a regular guy with a regular job and a family, and once again, talking about addictions and stuff, I was seeing other people on the side, things like that, and I got in this situation, and it was, I guess you'd say, a crime of passion. Tempers were involved. Previous to that, before I started doing the things that I was doing, I had never believed in like mental health and depression and things, but I got to where I just couldn't function. I got severely depressed, which really surprised me. And I got on some medication, some doctor prescribed medication, antidepressants. And in my opinion, that's what caused me to do what I did. Like I said, I have a murder charge.
but I can't use that as an excuse. I accept what I did, and it was wrong, and I hate that it happened. But I guess the main reason I want to do these type of things is I want people to understand that no matter how bad you screw up, you're still human. And there are some people in prison that probably shouldn't be out of prison because they don't try to change. So my whole thing in here is trying to become a better person. Whether I get out or not doesn't really matter. Our job, I think, is to become better people. And so I work at that every day. But no, I can't say my crime was anything other than the stuff I was going through mentally at that time. And there was some heated, arguments, shall we say, and but I can't say it was like I wasn't in fear for my life. It wasn't self-defense or anything like that. It was just an ugly situation that got totally out of hand, and I find myself here. But like I said, what I wanted people to know is that just because you come to prison doesn't, whether it's you're in here for 2 years or 27 years, it doesn't really matter. Things happen, and we're still human beings, and a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us just made one bad choice in life, and it can happen to anybody. It's the thing that I'd like to get across to the public, because it seems to me oftentimes people in the public, when something bad happens, they just go by what they see on the evening news, and that person is branded as a monster, whether it's like these guys' situation or my situation, where they don't really know the whole story. But then at the same time, when something happens to a friend or a loved one that they get in the same kind of situations, now suddenly it's like we have excuses. Oh, they're not a bad person. They just made a terrible mistake. And all I'd like to see is that applied to all of us, that, hey, we're still human beings,
Yeah, unfortunately, it's prison's a business.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. Trust me, I've been doing this a long time, so I know how it is. Without just like bashing those guys, but it's definitely a business, and a lot of people get paid, as they say in here, So it's a bad situation, and I'd like to see something more along the European model of prisons. I don't know how much you know about that, but it just seems like they seem to have a better handle on it from the human aspect of it, as far as sentencing and things like that. But yeah, I find myself in here, and I've done a lot of time, and like I said, my situation's different from these other two guys, but I feel like I met a lot of good people in prison who probably just made really bad mistakes, and that's my point that I would like to get out to the public. It's like, hey, people make mistakes regardless of the circumstances, and maybe if the public's opinion changed, then maybe something would get good. Because the thing about it being a business is very few people actually benefit from it. The taxpayer. I mean, it's like a $50 billion a year industry in America. And I mean, who's footing the bill for that? The taxpayer. I think people that are so gung ho about put them in prison and never let them out, I don't think they think about how much of their tax money is going to keep these things running, And it's not like a vacation spot for us. A lot of people tend to think, hey, man, they're in prison. They don't have to do anything. It's free 3 meals and a cot. And you know as well as we do, that's not the situation. This is not a vacation by any stretch of the imagination,
No, I mean, when I was in where I was at in the federal system, in the state, I could kind of you could hide if you wanted to. I guess you could say, like, you know what I mean. You had TVs. If you had a TV in your cell, I mean, unless you had a job, and a lot of times that was the one thing that was kind of mandatory, is that you had to go to work. You can't just lay around and do nothing, unless you like had a medical reason or something. So, but I mean, aside from that, I mean, you could just disappear, go to work and then stay in your cell if you have a TV. But I mean, that gets old, and so And then in the federal prison, they made sure you had to, like, if you didn't have a high school diploma and you couldn't prove it, you had to go take a GED, you had to go to work. So, I mean, there was a lot more. They didn't really let you sit around.
Right. Well, we in the state we're in, we have details and, like you said, jobs and so, like, for me, I have a job, and like you say, I enjoy it because I get out of the dorm, get to do something somewhat productive. I feel like I'm doing something productive. But there are a lot of guys, in here that don't have jobs, that just hang around the dorm all day. We don't have TVs in our cells in this state. But yeah, I know what you mean about just getting lost and just staying in the cell, because that's typically what most of us do. It's just we go to our jobs and we come back and we shower and then we, hang out in the cell,
Yeah.
So,
that's crazy. So yeah, you have to come into it with a way different mindset in your situation, because it's like there's, you've already resigned to the fact, what it sounds like. I don't know if you've exhausted appeals or, any of that, but I mean, when you resign to the fact that this is it, you know what I mean? Then you start looking at, okay, well, if this is it and this is as good as it's going to get, then let me try to navigate my way to make it the best that I possibly can for myself.
Oh, definitely. That's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's like the reality of it. So I always try to remember, I'm in prison, but I don't allow prison into me, so I try to stay busy and read and listen to music. We do things like that, watch a little TV, like I said, go to the job. But yeah, it's tough, you just have to, like I said, it's, I guess, kind of that whole Buddhist approach, it's like one day at a time, like one step and one foot in front of the other,
Yeah. What amazed me when I was there, is the amount of talent that most people have that are incarcerated or locked up. Dude, there's so much talent locked inside of prisons.
Oh yeah, definitely. You see all kind of like artwork and just ingenuity of like arts and crafts kind of thing. Of course, we aren't allowed a lot of things. That we're working on a very limited basis, but yeah, it's a lot of talent. I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yeah, like how did you figure out how to make a picture frame out of a Doritos, a bunch of Doritos bags with the silver insides?
Right, they were doing that when you were in. Yeah, they still do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, that's amazing, and it's like a picture frame.
Right. Oh, I know. It's crazy. Yeah, I've seen some really interesting things. Like, I knew a guy who took Elmer's glue and he like spread it out real thin, and then he covered it, I think, with markers or something, and he rolled it up and he made these little like figurines, little statues, like little fantasy things, and it's like who would have thought of doing something like that, So a lot of talent. We see a lot of talent.
Yeah. It's too bad. Hopefully they figure out how to reform some of this stuff. I mean, I have a feeling that at the end of the tunnel on this COVID thing, or when we get out of whatever situation we're in right now, there's going to be a lot of changes.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
It's getting, I mean, listen to some of my shows. I think right now we should be on a general strike, close to a civil war, and get some of the changes that we need to have, and get some of these criminals out of politics. I mean, seriously.
Right.
The real
listen to a few of your shows, so yeah, and enjoy them. Yeah. I know what you're talking about, for real. So hopefully, like you say, this will make people think, hopefully they'll sit back and think about what's going on, use this time, for this social distancing and all this stuff, self-quarantine to think about. So hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And I think people are. I think people, I think people already knew, you know what I mean? They were just what, I mean, what are you going to, when you think about it, like, well, I'm just one person. What can I do? Let me just worry about my little world here and making it the best for my family. And, there's not a lot of time, and they keep you busy for a reason. I mean, that's, if you're if you're not thinking about how we're fucking you, then, you know what I mean? We have a better shot of being able to keep fucking you.
Right. Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. And when you're in, you see that, and I don't think that's what a lot of the general public sees. They just look at it from like a retribution point, like, oh, these are bad guys, so we don't care what happens to them. But like I said, it affects one of us, affects all of us, basically.
Yeah. And then the fact that most people aren't sinister, and that, you know what I mean, most people are good natured by, you know what I mean, the majority of people. And so when they think about, like, somebody's, well, why would the government do that?
Right.
And it's because they're thinking from their terms, like, I would never do anything like that.
Exactly.
And so that's how people think. And, oh, I wouldn't do that. So you're silly, Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's funny, like you say. I mean, we've all are in this and been in it, and we recognize that stuff. And I don't think most people out there really, like you say, give it that thought, and they don't think about it from, like you say, the other side. The general public doesn't think about the way the government thinks, or the people that profit from all this.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's, we're at about an hour right now. Do you guys want to keep rolling, or do you want to end it here?
It's totally up to you, man. It's your time. So you tell us.
All right. Let's drop into some redemption. All right. And I'll start it off.
Okay.
And when I'm talking about redemption, that can mean a lot of different things. It can be, I paid my debt to society, when you get out. And I feel like I should, you do all your commitments, when you get out, parole, you get through that, and you're done. And redemption to me is not an external thing. And and the reason why I say that is because what I found is, if you're waiting for society to redeem you, it's not going to happen. The only thing that's going to redeem you when you get out and the stigma and all that is time and consistency. So because when I first got out, I was, fucking up. I did well for a little while, but I mean, I got out in 2006, and I didn't change everything until 2010. So it was 4 years afterwards, because I wasn't done. I still had things that I wanted to do. There was still some crimes out there that I wanted to commit. I mean, and I'm being 100% honest. I learned how to do check fraud. And so I knew there was credit card fraud out there, and I wanted to learn how to do that. And I found it. And, so, and that was after I got out of prison. And I got really lucky that I didn't end up going back. So, it's time and consistency, because once I started becoming consistent and changing things, everything was different. But redemption is in yourself. That's the most important part of redemption, I think, as a formerly incarcerated person coming out into the population again, that you have to find that redemption within yourself, because the self chatter inside your head, is what will tell you that you're not good enough, that you don't deserve this, that, who are you? You're just, you know what I mean? You let your past inside to your head, and it starts telling you all these things, or the things that you heard in the past. So you have to get beyond all of that. And that redemption is within you. you have to
I agree 100%.
yeah, you have to come to terms with what's happened, where you were, and where you're going to go. And until you do that, you will limit yourself. You'll because those voices in your head, they're very limiting. You know what I mean? They keep you in a box.
Right. Right. Well, that's my take on my situation is that, like, I often tell people this, and when I'm corresponding with people letters, I always say, you know, I feel remorseful, excuse me, for what I've done, and I am a changed person, but it does no one any good except for my inner feelings, because as far as the public is concerned, in my opinion, they don't care that I'm a different guy than the guy that did the crime. They don't care. So actually, I know that I did a crime, right? And I feel bad about it. And I don't have any beef with being sent to prison. My beef is the amount of time. Like, I mean, okay, you're forever a bad guy. So I basically can never redeem myself, other than my inner knowledge that, hey, I'm not that guy from 17 years ago, because I've been locked up 17 years. And so it sounds crazy, and people out there might understand, but I mean, actually, I know I'm a much better man than I was before I came to prison. You know, I mean, it changes your perspective, you know that. And so I did a lot of self-evaluation when I came to prison, and I got to looking at my life, and I'm like, God, I was a crappy guy. You know, I mean, I was a regular guy. I didn't think I was like an evil guy. I wasn't out there doing crime, but I wasn't a nice, concerned, caring father or husband or son. And I know that now I'm that guy, you know, and of course that might people, I'm sure a lot of people would say, oh, well, he's just saying that because where he's at, but you know, I'm going to be here. So I don't have any reason to say it other than it's what I feel. You know, I know I'm a better person for coming to prison, but you know, my thing is they let me out so I can get that redemption kit, so I can be a consistently good guy, you know. That's the problem I have with it. But like I said, as far as being in prison, I did a bad thing. I'm okay with that, but don't put me in here for the rest of my life. You know, that's the situation I'm in. But
yeah,
so,
yeah, that's I had something on my mind. I just lost it. Sal, how about yourself? What do you feel about redemption?
Redemption, I'd say definitely. Well, first off, your redemption starts in here. You alluded to the fact that you're in two years, going on 3 years, and just when you're getting used to it, you're back out on the streets. But I think there's kind of the same thing, the settle-in period, and once you get to that settle-in period, I think it's when you really have to start your redemption, I say, at least with your rehabilitation in terms of changing the way how you think about things, because contrary to popular belief, the system behind the wall, it's not built for rehabilitation and redemption. It's built for punishment, and I think that America has been through enough wars to know that, hey, if you put a person in a cell, and you lock them up, it's almost worse than death, because they go crazy. And they start thinking about things in their life and what they should have done and shouldn't have done. So you gotta start at that point, like, hey, okay, I messed up. Let me change how I was thinking and make myself a better person. With light at the end of the tunnel, my only concerns are, is this thing going to haunt me for the rest of my life? Because whereas, like, let's say a person who was an armed robber, a bank robber, let's say he comes to prison and he does 20 years and he gets out and he becomes a successful businessman, whether that's public speaking or whatever he's doing. He's celebrated, he he gets the label former bank robber, inspiring teens or young men to be better men, and you can put that headline across any media outlet and you pretty much will get a positive reaction. Now, on the other hand, change those two words, bank robber, in that sentence to sex offender in that sentence, and what does it look like?
Yeah. Instead of because I mean they would say former sex offender. So immediately before anybody even hears about what the good accomplishment that you did, they already tune out.
Right. And the thing is, like you said, former, but the thing is, like, for most sex offenders, there is no such thing as former, because when you get out from here, you got to go register. So you did your time, just like the other guy in prison, but you're still doing time after you get out. So for us, for me and Jimmy, like, our rehabilitation and redemption has to be so internal, and it's about fortifying ourselves against what probably may come in terms of the I wouldn't say the backlash, but the right, good term, the social distancing from people in society.
Yeah, I mean, because you hear about it every Halloween, they pop up. You know what I mean? How many sex offenders are in an area, and and it's you're probably right. Probably in a neighborhood. Let's say you have a neighborhood of 20. Let's just say maybe 2 or 3 might be, or maybe 4, but I would say like 2 or 3 might be people that you need to worry about, and the other ones were something, like maybe your situation, or urinating in public, or
Yeah. So but you gotta, it's about being strong. You just have to be mentally tough and kind of build a shell around you, and you got to filter out the information you receive. You got to filter out how people perceive you, because if you don't do that, you will take on society's perception of yourself, and it will make change, redemption very, very difficult. And that's not what you want. You want to look in your own mirror. Okay, this is who I was. This is who I want to be. This is who I am right now. Let me set those goals and work towards those goals. And,
Yeah, and it doesn't stop when you get out either. It's been a process, man. I mean, I got out in 2006. We're now in 2020. So what is that? Almost 14 years.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on myself. It's been a challenge, especially because and I've said this before, it's almost like when you weren't raised in a way like regular people were, you know what I mean? Where you dealt with trauma of some sort, or whatever it is that you've gone through as a child, and it's not the normal way that like you would see. You go to school, you graduate high school, you go to college or go into a trade, and then life just continues to go. I mean, that's kind of like the cookie cutter mold of kind of life, right? And sort of how it should work. And when you don't get raised that way, and you're forced to kind of like figure it out yourself, because parents aren't around, latchkey kid, whatever, which is the worst idea in the world, whoever came up with that. You're having to kind of build yourself back up, so to say, you know what I mean? And correct the mistakes, in upbringing or lack of upbringing, and figure it out on your own, and it's a internal process. And I think the fact that, when we get put away, we have an edge on most people out in society, because they don't usually have the ability of self-reflection, because they were never put in a situation where they had to take a time out, and all you can do is think. That's it. That's all you have is thought. especially when you first process in. I mean, you get like 21 to 30 days in solitary before they process you out, but before you actually even get into the general population, you have to, and you're coming from first time in prison, you have to do an intake, and a lot of times it's either just you and somebody else, or you by yourself, until they figure out what security level they're going to put you in and where you're going to finally go rest. So it was, and then there's a whole nother part of that too, is the decompression once you get out. Decompressing from the heightened level of alertness. You know what I mean? Because you always were on alert for me, it was for 3 years of, just always being suspectful. You know what I mean? You just got to keep your eyes open, because you got a lot of different types of people in there, man. You know what I mean? And you never know when something's going to pop off either. Just the littlest thing could ignite a dangerous situation. And so, trying to decompress from that, especially the separate, you know what I mean? I don't know how political your yard is, but I remember, it was, I ran with the whites. So it was, there was that, what do they call that? Segregation, and, having feelings about, other races. And then there's that whole thing that you got to kind of, if that was a part of what you were doing, I had to decompress from that a little bit, because you're thrown back into society, and it's, when I went where I'm from, it's a melting pot. There's everybody there. So it was an adjustment, man. And I suffered from PTSD. I'm pretty sure, when I got out.
Yeah, I definitely understand everything that you said. And I think, like you said, running with whites and just kind of segregating amongst the races. And I think that's part of the filtering that you have to do as well, because the good thing about here is that you get to self-reflect, like you said. The bad thing is that if you're not careful, you will take on the attitudes and the histories of other people before you even realize that you have, So let's say, for example, like you've never been robbed by a black person, but the couple of your buddies that you run with say, hey, black people, blah blah blah, and before you know it, you've taken on that same mindset versus saying, hey, this is not the experience that I've had, and that's part of, for me, like just kind of staying, like, okay, I hear you, but I don't have to adopt that same mentality, because when I get out of here, just like yourself, you're going to be in a melting pot. And that may not be the greatest of mindset to have on these streets, I assume.
Yeah, no, it's not, because it limits you. It limits you from opportunities. There is an underlying, energy about you. You know what I mean? That people can see. I mean, it's visible. That you know what I mean? That I don't know how to explain it, but I know it exists. You have an energy about yourself that is different than everybody else. And once you decompress from that and just kind of like, work on it, and, it was, it was difficult, man. And how I dealt with it is I was drinking, and I drank quite a bit. I mean, even though I was on, whatchamacallit, I don't think I had, I don't think like state was, I don't know if I would have, if I was breaking the rules or not, but I was, I used alcohol to cope. And, you know, luckily I pulled myself out of it. You know, I was up to like a fifth a day, and I pulled myself out of that, and, you know, detoxed on my own. You know, I had the shakes and everything else. I mean, you know, I locked myself in my room for about 3 or 4 days and just sweat it all out. And, you know, got back on the saddle and I was like, dude, come on, you got to go. Let's go. You know, what are you doing? You know, you're, you know, and that was, you know, I've done that a lot in my life, man, where I've had to, you know, just kind of, I guess where some people that suffer from depression would keep spiraling down and until, you know, something bad would happen. But I would always pull myself like out of it, you know, and just, have a routine of how to, you know, when I get to this point, these are the steps that I take to get out. And I got to do this. 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 And then I'm back on track again. And here we go rolling, you know?
Right. Yeah. You know, but hey, you've been out there 14 or so years, so you've done quite well, you know.
And that's the thing, man. It is possible. You just have to, time and consistency. You know, that's the formula. Time and consistency, and make small goals for yourself to keep accomplishing them. And that'll help build your self-esteem. You know, these little victories that you have in your life, those, no matter how small, it creates self-esteem and it creates confidence. And then once you achieve that, then you're going to want to do something else. And you're like, okay, well, let's try this now. And the more you keep doing that, and even if you fail, you're failing up. You're not failing back, because you're taking the opportunity to reflect. And how could I have done this different? How can I learn from this? And so as long as every time you make a mistake from this point on, you learn from it, and it's not so devastating of a mistake that it's going to impact your life, you know, and you just continue moving forward and forward and forward. And, you know, at some point, you know, you'll get some traction, and, you know, you'll be where you want to be. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. I'll tell you that much. It wasn't easy for me, but most of the difficulties that I had were self-inflicted, you know.
Oh.
They weren't because of, you know, the man trying to keep me down. They were just because of my own self. So, I mean, stay out of your own way for sure. If you can do that, then you know, you got it. You'll have it licked.
Yeah.
What about you, Jimmy?
Hey, so for me, I feel that redemption needs to be along the lines of communicative justice. In the fact of, I have not had a chance to communicate with society. I have not had a chance to communicate with my victim. I haven't had a chance to communicate with their family to find out not only what I can do for them to receive peace about the situation, but also for us to move on as a whole, society, the victim, and myself, from what happened into what they expect the future to be.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Are you there, Sean?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly now. You broke up for like the last 20 seconds.
Okay. You want me to start basically back over?
No, where are you moving around, or are you sitting in one spot?
Why now?
All right, I can kind of hear you. I can hear you better now.
Okay. What we experience here is basically as everybody starts to wake up, the signal starts to die. So, no, basically what I was saying is, I would like to see communicative justice in my situation, which is essentially society, myself, and my victim coming together to reach the best outcome for everybody involved and to talk about what happened, to figure out where do we go from here and what is best for everybody involved. That doesn't happen in our justice system. It happens in the European justice system a lot, but it doesn't happen here.
So do you have aspirations? It sounds like you have aspirations to try and get out and be an advocate of some sort.
Absolutely. One of the things I really want to work with is I want to work with other juvenile sex offenders. It's really crazy, but one of the statistics that we don't talk about is the largest age group of sex offenders is juveniles. And that's a problem. That's a problem. We tell our children, you're not old enough to consent to this act, but because you're over the age of 13, we'll prosecute you as an adult for it. And we never sit down and say, what happened for you to reach this point? What point are you at? And how do we bring you back to being a functioning member of society?
Okay. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I started this podcast was, I wanted to be able to reach out to ex-offenders as well, but it's not as easy, once you get out or once you're out here, because a lot of times, like I've reached out to probation departments, I've reached out to some programs, and they just, you know what I mean? They just didn't seem to be interested.
Right. Because unfortunately rehabilitation works against them.
Yeah.
If you rehabilitate everybody, you have no more parole departments. They have no job. They have nothing to live for anymore because there's nothing left in that area. And so, I guess my thing would be you have to find an area or a group of people that rehabilitation benefits them.
Yeah. Well, I figured, I'm like, all right, well, let me just continue on with my journey and what I'm doing. And then at some point something will present itself. Cause it always does. You're putting energy out there, and it comes back, and you just got to be paying attention for it. And then an opportunity will show up. Just like, this is an opportunity as well. It's not very often that you hear unedited stories, from people that are inside. You usually, you'll hear TV shows of people that are inside, but it's all edited up. So you don't know, they put it however they want,
Right. And I think that's the part of the communication that we're missing. We're not getting both sides. In this conversation, we're not getting both sides. You're hearing my side, you're hearing Sal's side, you're hearing Noodles' side, but we're not hearing the victim side. And I think that's just as much error as only hearing the victim side.
Yeah.
Not saying that this isn't a great thing. This is amazing. I think this is a step in the right direction.
For sure. Even if it would be considered a contraband chronicle. That's so crazy, man. It's the guards are crazy. They did
the whole system.
Yeah, they would bring in so much stuff. And even in the federal system, it's like when they made tobacco illegal in most prisons, all they did was made it easy, a black market so the guards could, make more money, and not catch a drug case if they got caught. They just lose their job.
Right.
That's it. You know what I mean? They wouldn't get drug charges on top of that for smuggling in, whatever kind of drugs.
Right.
And then now you add phones to that. Now it's even, probably, I think they were charging back when I was there is $500 for a bag of Bugler that you have to pay the guard for like it's like $15. You can get a bag of Bugler in a smoke shop.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think that has to happen because number one, you're not paying your COs enough money to be out of the poverty level. So they have to do something to supplement their income. A lot of these guards, they have kids, they have families, they have everything. And you're supporting them on, somewhere between $20,000 to $40,000 a year, and nobody can live on that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because up here in California, they make a lot of money. They make like 120 to 160 a year. Some of them even make up to 200,000 just because of all the overtime they get.
Oh wow, yeah. I need to move to California.
No, I'm talking about the prison guards. That's what they're making up here.
Right.
So yeah, it's great. Well, I think it's pretty cool what you're doing. Don't get caught, and the podcast idea that's pretty, I would have never thought about that.
Right. Yeah. We want to open conversation. We want to present the positive side of prison. We want to present the rehabilitation and the mindset that justice can be done correctly, and we can change to be the men that society wants us to be, and that from there we can move on along with society into creating a better system.
So here's an idea for you. Have you guys ever heard of the Ear Hustle podcast?
No, we haven't.
Okay, that is a legit podcast that's being done in San Quentin by inmates. So,
wow.
If do you have like somebody like a creative department there, or like a radio type broadcasting thing there in the facility that you're at?
Not at all. In fact, from what I understand, there was a college that wanted to come in and basically offer not just this prison, but the whole state. They wanted to do like a videography type thing where inmates could film each other and talk about what's going on and stuff, and the state completely shut them down. They did not want that in their facilities.
That's crazy. Well, check it out. It's called the Ear Hustle podcast. The guy that, no, it's different now. It's one of them. So the guy that actually started it, he, they got like 3 or 4 seasons out of it. And I think, he was a lifer, and he got his sentence commuted because the outgoing governor of California somehow got, wind of his story, his situation, and what he was doing, and he commuted his sentence on his way out.
Oh wow!
And then so the lady that worked at the creative department that was helping them do all of this, she stayed on because that's her job, and they have a new host for it. And then he's out, and he's still collaborating with stories from guys that are out and their struggles that they're having.
Yeah, I mean that would be beautiful, and I think that's what we need. We need conversation.
Yeah. Well, we need to start using social media for good things instead of stuff that doesn't matter, or fighting amongst each other, and the right, the left, this team, that team. You know what I mean? It's just there's so much static, that's keeping people away from you. You know what I mean? Kind of to where they can't hear each other.
Right. And I think that's, a lot of that is a mix of just not having time and not having the need. We know the mother of invention is need. And in here we see a need for conversation. We see a need for communication. And we see the ability through the internet and now, like I said, through illegal cell phones to start that conversation. And you have to balance the risk versus reward. And I think the three of us came together and decided the risk does not outweigh the reward in this situation. And that the reward is maybe a few people hearing our conversation and minds being changed as to what should be done as society or as a society with regards to the criminal justice system.
Yeah, that's great, man. And, that's definitely a good way to pursue what you're doing. And, thanks for having the courage to share with my audience, your stories. And, we'll be definitely, staying in touch, and, I will, do some update, episodes here every now and again, because I do circle around to some of my guests that were interesting.
Right, yeah, that would be great. Anytime that you or anybody else wants to have a conversation, we are completely open to it. So
all right.
We're excited to be here. We're excited that you gave us a voice today. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You're welcome. And so obviously normally this would be where I, ask the guests if they wanted to share any of their social media or anything like that. I don't know where you are with that, but your podcast that you put out, you got like 4 episodes. I was listening to one of them today, before we got on. I was listening to, which relationships and, the one about relationships and inside.
Right. That's our pilot episode. And actually what happened was I'm just learning social media. That's the same episode. It's worth the same episode. Unfortunately, I had a problem where the file corrupted when I uploaded it, and we just had a lot of problems. So that is all the same episode. We've only done one, but we are going to be producing another one this weekend. But yeah, definitely please share our Facebook, and hopefully we can get some people to hear us.
All right. So what I'll do is I'll just have you just send anything that you're going to want to appear in the show notes to me through Messenger, or I'll give you my email address, and then you can just you can email it to me if you want as well.
Okay. Either way works.
All right. Well, Noodles, Sal, and Jimmy, it was great talking to you. You guys stay safe. Wash your hands. Because it's probably you're not immune from that virus going there either.
All right. Thanks for having us, Sean. Thank you.
All right, guys. Take it easy. Bye.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the show, and thank you to Sal, Jimmy, and Noodles for sharing their stories and taking a risk to be with me here today. Yeah, definitely a unique situation, being able to have an interview with individuals that are sitting in prison right now. I don't know what I probably would have figured out some way of doing that too. It's just kind of crazy. So what I forgot to mention in the intro on this one was I am now, not every single one of these episodes, all of the Zoom interviews that I'm doing, I'm recording, so they will be available on YouTube. So, basically just me and the other person on like a Zoom screen each, so you can see us both. So I'm going to start adding that as well. Don't forget, if you want to support the show, go to the Linktree at the bottom of the show notes and follow that to the merchandise tab and go and check out what we got: mugs, t-shirts, stickers, magnets, cell phone cases, whatever this online company offers is set up for the show art and a couple of other things that I got on there. I actually bought some and it should be here in like a week. So on some of these Zoom interviews, I'll be wearing the merchandise that I get, or the three things that I've bought, and I'll share that or wear it or share it on the video. I've got a lot of content coming up. Just this last week, I've got 8 interviews that I've done so far. This week, I have 10 scheduled. A lot of authors are coming on the show, so lots going on. Pretty busy. I should be trying to shoot out. I may just end up upping from 400 and go to the next level on my hosting platform. That way I can just blast out as many as I can. I need to get these download numbers up. So yeah, that's about it, man. Just we'll hope everybody had a happy Easter. Everybody stayed safe. It's still staying safe. Social distancing, forced celibacy, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I hope everybody's doing well, and I will be talking to you soon. But until then, keep it 100. Stay true to yourself. Everything else is just noise.